welcome to Weapons of Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 208, which can be found at wmdpodcast.com/208. You can find it on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. You can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and X. David.
Sir.
Are you getting that intro memorized? You think you could do it if I'm ever dead or absent?
Even if I could, even if you've been, what do they call it? Been lost. Yeah. He's been missing for quite some time now. We don't know where he's at.
If I ever suddenly go Joe Biden on you, you don't.
Yeah,
think
go all ham and start saying that women don't have electricity anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll be sure and not do that to the extent that I can control myself. So in this year of our Lord, the third week of August 2024, we had the shining example of democracy, tolerance, equality. That is the DNC National Convention. And boy, was it a shit show. So David and I are here to give you the breakdown, the rundown, the breakdown, the eulogy, the postmortem.
The good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent.
It's all ugly. I can assure you. So
come on. There were some pretty words said. You know, I gotta say, I do miss how some people on that dais decided to talk and tell everybody that they need to start listening to the other people because they are Americans too. Well, that's an interesting idea.
Sounds
Mr.
like you
Obama.
watched his speech.
I did a little bit. I did actually research a little bit this week. I know it's out of the ordinary for me, but no, I just thought it was funny that, you know, it takes a former president to go, hey, we need to all come together, you know, and listen to the other side and stop calling them fucking idiots. And then everybody goes, you know what? He's right. What a concept. We should treat all of each other with respect and dignity, even though we share different concepts of life and different perspectives.
And then they promptly went outside and screamed at and threw punches at somebody in a red MAGA hat.
Right.
It's just like those like fair weather Christians, right? That go in on Sunday and they get their Bible lesson.
Hey,
and
let's not throw any stones, all right?
And then as soon as they leave the church, it's all, you know.
The fuck away from me, you poor.
Anywho, so we're just going to hit you with some of the highlights and then our overall discussion. But the big part, the big takeaway is we finally, what are we, like a month and a half into the
Did
Harris,
we get to hear from Kamala?
the Harris coronation? We finally have some policy positions from her, and you won't be surprised to learn that when there were no policy positions, it was actually better. Because then you just thought, you know, maybe she's just, you know, out to sea without a rudder.
She's cooking something up.
She's out to sea without a rudder. And, you know, as bad as the, you know, corporate, you know, shadows that are behind the DNC, as bad as they are, at least they're not like full-blown commies in the sense that they don't want to abolish private property because that would involve abolishing their ownership over private property. So as bad as they are, at least as bad as corporatism is, and don't get me wrong, it is bad. It's not full-blown communism bad. And so when we thought that, you know, maybe she was just being steered by those groups of people, you know, pick your poison. But it seems like based on her policy positions, it's worse. It's worse than that.
Hey, Dane.
Yeah.
You remember when George W. was in office?
Yeah.
And we were
he had like devil horns and
we were like, well, at least that's over. At least that will be the worst president that we've ever had. There's no way it could get any worse than this.
All of American electoral politics since then has just been one revolving hold my beer.
Right. Like,
just one after another.
Oh, please lie to us and get us into a war that we're going to be in 20 for 20 fucking years. At least it was, you know, familiar.
Yeah.
But now we're in a what is it? A brave new world where everything's upside down and topsy-turvy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's bad. Anyway, so the DNC, before it got kicked off this past week on Monday, on Sunday night, some of the welcome parties, as is the classic dumpster fire that is all things Democrats, several were shut down by pro-Palestine groups. And all throughout the DNC, there were groups of thousands of people burning American flags, Israeli flags, everything else in between. And what I will say about that is this. I'll say two things. The first thing is, this is the bed that Democrats have made, right? They don't have any sort of ideological consistency other than just envy and hatred of anybody that has a little bit more than them.
They're consistently inconsistent.
Yes. So how do you build a coalition if you don't have any common goals to push forward? Well, you do exactly what they have done, is engaged in identity politics, and you try to knit together this patchwork of interest groups that have like 2% of the things in common, and that 2% is they hate some form of whatever they define as capitalism, and they hate Republicans, and you patch that together, right? You get, blacks and Hispanics and LGBT, and, you get all of these different small little interest groups, and you patch them together and you form a coalition, and that's how you maintain electoral success. It's worked out for Democrats for a long time. Starting to come apart at the seams. Because although the Democrats are supposed to be historically, the anti-war party, all of that kind of stuff, they are now the full-throated war party. So, have every last Ukrainian dead before they stop escalations with Russia, carte blanche to Israel. You listen to pro-Palestine protesters. They absolutely hate the Biden-Harris administration. So that patchwork is somebody's pulling at the threads. And it's starting to fall apart, and that was made evident this week with the pro-Palestine protests disrupting the DNC all throughout the week. But you wouldn't know that if you watch mainstream media, because they don't cover any of that, because there's no dissent against the Kamala Harris administration incoming.
So what are we going to have to call this one? Mostly peaceful rallies?
Yeah, mostly peaceful DNC conventions.
Hey, you did take my edit. You did take my note. Anyway, it's a little off-camera solutions. Anyway, no, it's interesting that the only thing that's, been the only aggression that was really caused at any of Trump's rallies so far was actually a Democrat sneaking into his rally and trying to kill him. So what happened this week with, what do they call, the National Guard or something like that? For the protests that were outside, I saw a lot of militarized.
Did they call in the National Guard in
I don't know
Illinois?
if it's the National Guard, but I saw a lot of people in a lot of body armor and heavy equipment heading towards a certain area. So,
one thing in particular I found funny is there was a news report, and I couldn't find the link to pull it up, but there was a news report going into the convention about all the local stores around downtown Chicago where the convention was held were all boarding up their stores. And just like we made the point about this in 2020, who were they boarding up for? They weren't boarding up for a Trump win, or a Biden win, afraid of the MAGA people. They were boarding up for the other side. Same kind of thing. So literally like 48 to 72 hours after their candidate is shot at, nobody in Milwaukee is concerned that the Republicans are going to start, just torch and pitchforking the whole damn downtown Milwaukee. No business is boarding up in Milwaukee, but the Democrats come to town in Chicago, and all the local businesses are like, wait a minute. We got to, prep here.
Are we secure enough for all this freedom? Do we have enough security for this freedom? And all these accepting people to come to our place that all they want is peace and moral high ground and acceptance and burning
in a hardcore, Democrat blue city, by the way, of Chicago. So, they're in friendly territory. They're at a friendly convention. Again, if you believe the whole narrative that the Democrats are the peace, tolerance, love Trump's hate kind of people, on home turf.
Was that on the south side of Chicago by any chance?
Couldn't tell you. It was at the United Center where the Bulls play, and I don't know where that's exactly situated within the city.
It was, Dane. I don't think you would have it there.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Fun stuff.
I always forget. Is it the Cubs or the White Sox that are on the south side? I think the White Sox. Yeah.
White Sox, Dane.
Yeah.
It's just fun little, just liberal things.
So anyway, that's how the convention started off, and it did not get any better from there because, as the banner here suggests, and for our audio-only listeners, we're calling this segment, the DNC goes full R word, you never go full R word. And in our first little clip, just to give you a slice of the life that is the DNC this week, we have Joe Biden doing battle with the teleprompter, and you're never going to guess who wins.
In its decision overturning Roe v. Wade, as you heard earlier tonight, the United States Supreme Court majority wrote the following, quote, women are not without electoral or political power. No kidding.
So, David, listen.
From the same people that brought you, his superpower is his age. Why are they doing this to him? Are they just are they punishing him for something? Like, why are you doing that to him? Just let him go home. Let him sleep. I'm sure he's tired. He's always tired.
Well, David, listen, in 2024, I was not aware of this. I listen, I know
this
that
has to be abuse of elderly, by the way.
I know that women are very oppressed in a whole lot of areas of life, especially in the United States. But I had no idea that their access to electricity was so under attack.
You know?
That it took the Supreme Court weighing in to give them, electric access.
You know what, Dane? When my lovely wife calls FPL, they treat her like shit. When I call them,
for the man of the house?
Mr. Such and Such. I almost said my last name. Don't do that. Hey, Chris, get that little out. Anyway, Mr. Such and Such.
You almost did it again.
Right away. I know I did. Got it. Take 3. No, we'll take the first 2. You did, But,
yeah. So listen, electrical success. That is a major plank of the Democratic Party.
We got to get him into this. We got to get him out of the Stone Age and into the brave new world.
So good on Harris. Now, you would think
on Harris. We should make that the first thing. Give all women electricity. They deserve the right to electricity.
Now, you would think that Joe's age is bad enough and that, he's going to make some mistakes, some faux pas. He's not going to really be totally in touch with reality such that his points don't make a whole lot of sense. But now we have some random state senator from some state that I don't even know babbling on about how Trump may, if he gets in power, weaponize the DOJ against his political opponents. That would just be anathema.
Unprecedented. By the way, I want to circle back to it, Jen Psaki. Another thing that Joe Biden said after we do this clip.
Okay.
Donald Trump would be able to weaponize the Department of Justice to go after his political opponents. He could even turn the FBI into his own personal police force. That is not how it works in America. That's how it works in dictatorships.
First of all,
go on.
What? She on crack? What's that weird thing she's doing, like licking her lips after every time
some
she
of us are more vocally oriented sometimes, Dane. Okay?
Yeah. Well, random state senator lady from some state that I don't even know is very, very worried about Trump doing exactly what Biden is doing. So
we need to not let them fuck us like we are fucking them. And funny story, true too. Don't both Trump and RFK Jr. have trial dates and stuff, and like fighting for one's fighting for the right to be on the ballot, and the other one's fighting for the right to be on the ballot. But one of them's going to be a felon if he doesn't win, and the other one's just going to be fucked if he doesn't win, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how fucked RFK is going to be. He's just going to go back to his, rich
being
lawyer Kennedy life. So
being
yeah, I'm sure he'll be fine.
That sucks.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, there's nothing quite like being so out of touch with reality that you are worried about, the other side doing to you exactly what you're doing now.
That'd be like a boxer saying, if you let him hit me back, he might knock me out. I should only be allowed to hit him. That's a fair fight, you stupid son of a bitch. Like, hypocrisy abounds, Dane. Hypocrisy abounds.
It does. Now, and speaking of hypocrisy, we have Big Mike stepping in to tell everybody that he. I don't want to get into pronouns.
Stop.
This person is very concerned about cheating. Okay, and they don't like it when people cheat, and damn it, they won't engage in it.
If things don't go our way, we don't have the luxury of whining or cheating others to get further ahead. No. We don't get to change the rules so we always win. If we see a mountain in front of us, we don't expect there to be an escalator waiting to take us to the top. No.
So in tone-deaf statements of the century, she had another statement, not in this clip, obviously, about how her parents were very distrustful of people that had more money than they needed. And meanwhile, her and former President Obama have like four houses all over $10 million.
What's their speaking salary? What do they get paid to have a public speech again?
Yeah. So, I guess her parents don't trust her anymore by that standard.
Well, who would?
Yeah. They don't cheat, David, and they don't change the rules to get what they want. Never.
And they
the
certainly
Democrats
don't weaponize the DOJ.
That.
And God damn it, they would never try to actually assassinate a political rival.
Never.
And God damn it, if they did, they'd come right out and say, "You caught us. We've been lying the entire time, and take us to jail because we need to be held accountable for our actions."
If there's one thing that I think of when I think of Democrats, it is accountability.
Well,
we're
I
all
think
humans.
about politics.
We all make mistakes,
yes.
but they cop up to them very quickly and forthrightly. So good on them.
Correct.
And then it's too long to play, and I didn't find the part, but I do have, and just to show at least the video people that I do have it, and that the link will be down in the show notes. We had a 6-minute clip here from Steve Kerr. Well, I did all of a sudden start playing it.
Wait, what the fuck does he know about politics? He coaches basketball, does he not?
Well, if you watch this 6 minutes, you will find out that he knows less than nothing.
Oh,
he has about, the 5-year-olds that used to watch Schoolhouse Rock. He doesn't even have that level of understanding of how the real world and civics and politics works, because he gets up there and obviously he ties it in with sports about how a bunch of people with different backgrounds all working towards one goal can accomplish great things and all of this kind of stuff. And he talks about integrity and all of these things that you look for in your coaches and your teammates and people that are just generally leaders. And that if somebody doesn't possess those things, that you probably wouldn't want them to be the president of the United States. Obviously, the implication is that Trump has none of those things, the integrity and all that kind of stuff. And Kamala just has it in spades. And so you would be just
married men.
You would just be a big, dumb, stupid rube if you voted for Trump over Kamala.
Move.
So.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't get any better. I promise you.
Wow.
When Kerr steps to the stage, but that was the, I guess, quick and dirty horror show. And there were a lot more things, obviously, that you probably very well served if you didn't watch any.
Circling back to the Biden thing, he made a declaration that I hadn't heard before, that the number one cause of death in children was gun violence.
Oh.
Did you know that, Dane?
Yeah.
Did you know that?
They've been on that one for a couple years now. I think that's been their talking point since Uvalde. They haven't updated the software. So that's all they can keep saying.
Well, at least you can't argue any of those facts, Dane.
Yeah. You can't argue facts that don't
the science
care about your feelings.
Correct.
So you're thinking, guys, all right, it's just some, Homer team buffoons up on stage, cheering on their gal, rooting for Team Blue no matter who, blah, blah, blah. That's standard for politics. That's par for the course. How bad could it really be? Well, David and I over the last few weeks.
I'm so glad you asked.
David and I over the last couple of weeks, and you've probably seen elsewhere, have been lambasting Kamala for being the presumptive nominee and now the official for about a month and a half now, and has no policy positions. Well, It would have been much better if she stayed mute on the point, because it didn't get any better. She first came out with, she wants to institute price controls, because in her mind, in the leftist brain rot, don't understand even the most basic, principles of economics like supply and demand, that if bad company do bad thing, then
mean like bad thing.
Government can just come in with piece of paper, write words on piece of paper, and then that fix bad thing.
Of course.
There's not real things in the world like tangible resources that require inputs and development and transportation to get it to the shelves and all of these kind of things that are going to go into the production process when
it's
you
just those
set
greedy
in price
fucking
control.
grocery stores, Dane. Don't you know nothing? It's those greedy grocery store managers. I tell you what, they're taking us for a ride, Dane. Had nothing to do with any of the policies that they've enacted over the last 4 years. Not a fucking thing. And if it did, it was Trump's fault and it wasn't theirs. But I'll tell you what, in another episode of Tone Deaf Liberals, what are they always accused of being? Socialists?
Mm-hmm.
Who sets the price of goods and services in a socialistic governance?
Yeah. It's
the government, right?
Yeah.
Huh.
It gets
what's
progressively
supposed to
worse
set?
as you trend further and further towards full-blown communism.
What's supposed to set the market in a democracy or whatever we claim that we are today?
In an purported free market capitalism, blah, blah, blah. It is people simply buying and selling in the market. That's what determines price.
Let the market make the market, right?
That's called price discovery. Yes, that's how the stock market is supposed to work when they don't cheat, is people transacting over time. It all balances out and everybody gets a general idea of this good or service is worth this. And it's all undergirded, all based on the immutable laws of supply and demand. If you have more of a resource and you have less demand, then the price is going to fall until you reach equilibrium, and vice versa. If you have a limited resource and high demand, then the price is going to come up until you have equilibrium, and that's what your market price is. It's a very, fifth grade economics 101 understanding of how price discovery happens outside of government force. But as David's saying, the socialists and communists don't understand this point, so they just think that politician X can step in and mandate a price, and no ill consequences are going to come of that.
I mean, it's not like government stepping in and guaranteeing education-backed loans that have to be paid off because the government guaranteed it had any effect on college tuition whatsoever, or the amount of education that's coming out of college nowadays too. So
yeah, and I mean, as bad as the explosion in the price of college because of this poor policy, you have many historical examples, and we don't have to go back to ancient history, the Soviet Union, to see how price controls worked out. Because what price controls ultimately do, they don't fix anything. What they ultimately do is they create shortages. Because if you're a producer of, let's say, oranges, right? And you know that it costs so much money to plant the orange grove, to keep it fertilized, to pick it, to transport it to the grocery store, et cetera, you have costs in that production and transportation and distribution chain all along the way. So you tally up your costs at the end and you say, okay, it costs me X number of dollars per orange. So I need to sell them for Y number at the grocery store in order to make a profit. Because if I can't make a profit, what am I doing here? And God forbid, if I'm making a loss, I'm just going to go out of business. And so when the government steps in and says, you can't decide what oranges cost, we're going to cap them at certain prices. Well, for every producer that doesn't have an economy of scale, that can't produce so many oranges at such a cheap price that they can afford to sell them at the arbitrarily mandated cost and still turn a profit, is what you do is you put all of those other people that don't have that, all the other producers, out of work. And so those producers are now no longer making oranges. And so the number of the quantity of oranges falls, and that's how you get shortages. So when you used to go to the grocery store in a non-price controlled environment, and you had oranges from 8 different companies at varying prices, depending on whether they're organic or whatever, grown in Florida, grown in halfway around the world, whatever, you have options. Now you have one option from one company that the government controls, and that company can't control every orange grove on the planet. And so now you have 5 oranges when you used to have 50. Very simple concept, but again, they either refuse to understand it or they're too stupid to understand it.
Or option B, BC3PO, because I didn't know you were going to say the second part. They think you're dumb enough not to know that the price isn't set by the grocery store. The price is set by the fucking market. Right. The market that they've been presiding over for the last 4 years.
Yeah. Which, by the way, grocery stores, very similar to restaurants, operate on like a 1% to 3% margin. So it's not like grocery stores are just like sitting back there with their monocle and bag of money, just like, getting rich off this whole thing. Grocery stores are in the same sort of pinch as everybody else. So going after them is kind of stupid. But although I use the example of Russia where, shortages abounded in all kinds of goods and services, because under full-blown communism, the state owns everything and just arbitrarily attaches prices to them. By the way, funny little historical anecdote that's never talked about, but really is kind of illustrative of this whole point. By the end, like the late 70s and into the 80s of the Soviet Union, what we learned after the Soviet Union fell is they were having shortages so widespread throughout their economy. It was such a problem that the central planners in the Politburo, how they started deciding like what does a price of jeans cost or anything like that, they were literally smuggling in like Sears Roebuck's catalogs. And they were just saying, oh, jeans are $15 in America. We're going to say jeans are $15. And like, that's how they were deciding what the prices were towards the end of the Soviet Union. In the beginning, it was, unelected bureaucrats making political decisions, based on their own self-interest. But by the end, it was literally like, it's like, what's that meme where like you're copying off your partner? It's like, we hate capitalism. Capitalism's terrible. It's oppressive. But then like the capitalist is over there, like putting the answers on the test. And the Soviet Politburo is like, oh, okay, jeans, $15. Gallon of gas. Oh, okay.
Sounds about right. Sounds about right.
But for a more recent historical example of how these price controls worked, we have this beautiful chart of Venezuela when price controls were implemented under Maduro in 2013. And guess what happened to overall inflation? So not only did it not control the price of the specific thing they were trying to control, it completely destroyed the currency overall and put Venezuela into the state that it is today. So...
You mean the fucking destination spot for all vacations nowadays? That's what it became, Venezuela. Right? Everyone's dying to get in there, right?
Now, that would be bad enough if it weren't for Harris's other policy proposal, which is a 25% tax on unrealized gains for high net worth individuals. A 44.6% capital gains tax proposal, the highest in history.
Perfect.
And raising the corporate tax rate up to 28%. Now, 2 things about that. First of all, I can hear all the leftist heads exploding saying, what are you guys complaining about?
They're only going to tax the rich. They're only coming for the corporations. You fucking idiots.
And
how much has that worked out over the past couple of years? Like,
those 80,000 new IRS agents that were hired to go after your $600 Venmo transactions.
Where's all those news reports of the fucking IRS kicking down the doors of Goldman Sachs and going, "Give me your fucking president. We're taking him out." Like, none. There's no video. There's not even any news stories about like, oh, well, they were a little flippant with. If Wells Fargo has pulled bullshit for the past 3 years too. There hasn't been one IRS agent that has showed up on their doorstep yet.
Yeah, it's
it's really easy to say flowery language at a fucking conference, but when you actually don't do any of the things that you say that you're going to do, people start remembering. People don't forget. Come on, Dane.
Oh. Yeah.
Oh, come on. No. Yeah. Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
You whipped it out on me too fast. So anyway,
nickel for every time I've heard that.
to David's point about, oh, they're only going after the rich, blah, blah, blah. We have a couple more historical examples, this time a little bit closer to home. Right here in the United States, we have an income tax comparison. And for the audio-only listeners, I'm going to break this chart down. So it's a chart in essentially 3 columns. It is the marginal income tax brackets in 1913, and then adjusted for inflation, what that would be today. And now remember, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, in 1913, the argument for the passage of the 16th Amendment, the right, because again, another historical thing that people often forget is because they have this meme, which we're here to destroy in their head, that, well, government can tax, right? Because it's got to build roads and bridges and schools and stuff like that. And so, a little bit of tax is okay, but sometimes they go too far with it. Well, even under that conception of government, under the original Constitution as drafted, the government did not have the authority, the power, the federal government did not have the power to tax you individually on your income. That was, I believe what was called a capitation tax is you can't levy a tax on an individual citizen from the federal level. Now, states could do that, but the federal government could not. And so what that required was the passage of an amendment which explicitly allowed it. So previously, when the government wanted to do unconstitutional things, they actually went through the Article 5 process and amended the Constitution. So, at least give them credit on that. So the passage of the 16th Amendment, the original promise was the entire income tax bracket was only going to be 1 to 7%. Meaning, if you were the richest person in the United States, the most of your income that you could be taxed on was 7%. And now Kamala wants to take it all the way up into the 40s. So the original bracket was if you made $0 to $20,000, you were only taxed 1%. Today, that would be if you make more than $480,000. So when Biden comes out and says, I'm not going to raise taxes on anybody that makes under $400,000. Well, if we stuck to the 1913 plan, every single person up to $400,000 earner a year is only getting taxed 1% on their income. Not myself personally, don't make anywhere near $400,000, but the tax bracket I'm in, they take 33%, well, it's like 32.7% of every dollar I make.
But so you're rich, Dane.
A full third. Basically, I work from January to April for nobody but to fly pedophiles to Epstein Island. I don't feed my family with my January to April salary. I don't, save for retirement. I don't do anything to take care of the people that I love and that are around me. The first 4 months out of the year, a whole third of my salary goes to the federal government.
Don't you understand, Dane? They have to do that so that they can make the roads better and make the educational system better and fix East Palestine and fix Hawaii. And fix all the places that they continually let degrade over the fucking country over the past couple of years. And definitely ask us whether or not they should send another $60 billion to Ukraine to fight a proxy war with one of our biggest fucking adversaries ever. And before they send any more money over to Taiwan or any money to Israel or any of the other places that they never ask us where they want to send it from. At least they respect the fact that we work so hard to give them the taxes, which is why they don't drive up the national debt every single fucking year.
Yeah. And they do it responsibly such that all the money that they do take, they make sure that they don't spend even more than that and go into debt that, burdens our unborn great-grandchildren with debt that they'll never even pay off.
Can I see your pretty face again, dude?
They don't do that. So
thanks, man.
Yes, I am going to bring it back. We weren't done with that chart yet.
Oh.
So because I want to break it down for the non-video listeners. So without getting too much more into the weeds. So if you made 20 to 50,000 in 1913, 2%, 50 to 75 is 3%, 75 to 100K is 4%, 5 to 250, 6. And then if you made over $500,000 in 1913, so basically like 5 people, it's more than that, but you get my point. Then you paid 7%. And that's the max. It didn't matter whether you made 500,000 or a million or 10 million in that 1913, you paid 7%. Now it's much higher. Anyway, all of those adjustments for today, 1% is 480K. If you made over 1.2 million in a single year, it was only 2%. 1.8. And by the way, this isn't even today. These are 2015 dollars. It's even worse now after the COVID explosion in inflation. All the way up to the highest bracket they have here. If you make in 2015 over $12 million, you faced a 6% income tax. So the lesson here, you've probably already gathered, is what David was alluding to in much, much fewer words, is the program that's implemented, and that was the same argument in 1913, 7%, even at the max tax under that current proposal, was only going after the super, super, super ultra wealthy. And today, now everybody, we have another nice little chart. This is the number of households that actually have to submit income tax forms. And what that little dotted line is showing you on this chart is showing you that's the number of households in America. So the fact that we have more people filing income tax returns than are even households in this country means there's a lot of single and non-house owning renters that are submitting income tax returns when, again, back in the day, it was all intended to be just for that very top cream of the crop, high earners in the American economy that were going to be subjected to this. Now everybody is, and at rates much, much higher. The lowest tax rate, I think, is what, like 10%? So even at that, which I would kill for, is still 3 percentage points higher than what the absolute highest that was proposed in 1913.
Right.
So it never stays. Whatever the government proposal is, we're only going to tax 25% on unrealized gains. You don't have any stock, so you're not going to have any unrealized gains. What's the big deal? Or only 44.6% on capital gains. You don't have any property. You're never going to own a home. We made sure of that. So you're never going to have capital gains taxes. What are you so concerned about? That's where it starts. It ultimately always trickles down, and they're not after them. The point David was making about Goldman Sachs. They're not after the 80,000 IRS agents ain't going after Ken Griffin. They're coming to knock on your door for your $601 Venmo transaction.
Oh, well, I don't have anything to say about that. I mean, that's, again, when the people get excited about, like, oh, they're going to give $25,000 to first-time home buyers, or they're going to, pay back your fucking student loans. You'll never have to pay them again. It's like, where is it coming from? Why are they doing this? And all I have to say is every time they come out and help people, it only fucks over the middle class, and it might benefit the lower class a little bit, but not enough for it to make much of a difference. So then what happens? The middle class starts shrinking, or they can't afford the goods anymore. And the lower class is kept lower, and the rich get richer because, as we all know, all those corporations, all those box seats that were so filled in with all that premier entertainment from Taylor Swift to fucking Beyonce at the convention. I thought this was political, by the way. What the fuck are entertainers there for? What are they putting on concerts that they would normally charge $1,400 a seat for the DNC? Isn't that a little tone deaf too? What was your performance rate? How do you get that money? Why would you need Beyonce or Taylor Swift to convince people to vote for you? By the way, all those people in the box seats that were clapping, and credit to Cuomo, I'll give credit where credit's due. All those people in the box seats started off at $500,000 a box. They're all clapping and cheering along with the people down in the normal crowd too. And those are the fuckers that are supposed to be taxed the most. With her saying that she's going to come for the corporations. She's going to come after unrealized gains. Like, how much unrealized gains do you think the fuckers in those box seats are realizing?
Yeah.
Probably a lot. Probably a lot more than any of us would ever fucking make in a year, let alone 10. So, and they're clapping and singing right along. So, again, words are good, but actions speak louder. So I'm going to go ahead and say your history is letting them off the hook and making us pay for it. I don't believe you.
Yeah, and to your point about the shrinking middle class, let me just give you a little explanation of what this 44.6% on capital gains really means. Those people in those boxes, They own the apartment buildings and the high rises and everything else like that. So what that 44% means is they're just simply not going to sell. So if you thought you had a hard time finding a place to live before this policy proposal comes into effect, what you are guaranteed is that for as long as that policy in place, all the people that own all the assets, they're not going to sell those things, because if they don't sell them, then there's no capital gains tax to pay anything on. So they're just going to keep everything. And as we sit here right now, we have the lowest home ownership starts in history. We're tied for the point in history. Is we should have an expanding economy. Now, if you're going to listen to Kamala Harris, and she seems to be running against her own record, because at the same time, Bidenomics and the Biden-Harris administration is doing so great, the economy's booming, but when she gets in office, she's going to fix the economy. Doesn't make sense. But the point is that all the people that currently own all the assets are not going to sell the assets, because they don't want to pay those taxes. So what that means for you and me, the middle class, the lower classes, et cetera, that don't own those assets, is if you thought home ownership and the idea of owning real estate was out of reach before, it's going to be cranked up by 10x. Because now, not only with inflation burning your candle, burning the wick of the candle from one end, the other end is there's going to be no inventory for sale. So they're just going to keep gobbling up, BlackRock going in and buying all these individual single family homes, going to keep buying everything and they're just not going to sell. So it truly is, I hate this whole idea of the rich get richer, because it's usually used as an example against capitalism, is that it's a dog eat dog world and the rich just always win. In a free economy, the pie is not fixed. The pie can grow for everybody. So yes, even though the rich guy gets richer by a faster and larger degree because he has more resources to invest and turn his money into more money than you do, you still can also get richer in that environment because the pie is growing for everybody. In this environment, the pie is fixed, and everybody that already has their pieces of the pie ain't sharing with anybody else. They're not going to sell. So again, this doesn't hurt the people in those boxes at all. That's why they can look down and clap like seals along with the rest of the plebs down on the floor and cheer for these things, because they know the game. They know they're fine. You and me that are trying to break in, that are trying to get a foothold in this world, that are trying to own a little bit of real estate, own something that's going to give us some sort of passive income, that's just completely going to be turned off. And you have, I don't know if the Biden numbers are any indication from the 2020 election, you have upwards of 80 million people, assuming they're not all dead or, made up people in a computer system, et cetera. You have 80 million people in this country that are going to go to the polls and vote for that policy, completely cutting off their nose to spite their face just because she's not Orange Man. If that is not, we talk about TDS all the time, if that's not a derangement syndrome, that you are willing to foreclose your economic future, both in the present, for your kids, grandkids, and unborn great-grandkids, into God knows how long it would take to turn that policy around. It's going to take absolute poverty and destitution, and for the people to do something drastic to change it. You're willing to commit yourself to that because you hate, fear, and loathe Orange Man.
Well,
there's something wrong in your head if that's the way that you're thinking about this whole process.
The good news here, Dane, is that there's still time to change it, we think. And right now, all you have to do is vote correctly. And I'm not telling you how to vote. All I'm saying is, if they're an incumbent, you might want to look at their track record. And if they aren't voting the way that you think that they should be, or the way that they say that they're going to this time, maybe vote their ass out. And then next time, vote them out too. And then keep voting them out until they actually start doing what they're saying. Because I don't know how long.
Easier said than done.
I know. But how many times have you been shouted out for throwing your vote away for voting third party, Dan?
Every time.
It's like we are the black sheep. But again, I'll say it and I'll say it again till we're blue in the face. How do you fix it then? Because all I've ever heard of was the lesser of two evils, the lesser of two evils, the lesser of two evils. Well, we're here now. We're on the verge of a financial, they're calling it a recession. Probably a depression is looking a little bit more like. And then on the other hand, we have World War III. Everyone didn't say much about World War III at the DNC for some reason. I don't know
No.
why. Or Ukraine. They had a couple of people from Ukraine, but they didn't mention like, we're pissing Russia off a lot. We probably want to have a nice, real strong military complex ready to go. They didn't want to bring up any of the bad stuff, which is just interesting. So
an uncalculable number, not uncalculable as in it can't be done, just they haven't bothered to look. Number of dead Ukrainian citizens because they have continued to push this war and refusing.
But we can't just let Putin take that area, can we? Can't just do it.
Listen, the United States is the lone superpower still, probably for a few more years until, China reaches parity. If the United States wanted peace in Ukraine and Russia, it could happen tomorrow. Yes, there's going to need to be some concessions from both sides, but it can be done. As a matter of fact, I think just a month or two ago, Putin actually, sent out a message saying, I'm willing to sit down. Just come on and sit with me.
Yeah.
But it literally would take nothing from the United States other than, and I don't want to get sidetracked on this topic too much, so I'm going to stop myself, but literally, the United States could just say, we're out of NATO. Because what was the purpose of NATO? The purpose of NATO was after World War II, you had this major Soviet menace that, was looming over Europe. And you had these Western European countries that are like, we need a bulwark against this because they're too powerful and blah, blah, blah. So they formed NATO in order to, have parity with the Soviet Union and stop the westward advance. Okay. Served its purpose. Soviet Union collapsed in 91 and NATO had lived its purpose, disbanded. But it's continued to this day and continued the provocations. And now in 2022 and forward, we have an ongoing proxy war for no reason. And the biggest beef from the Russian perspective is NATO expansion. It's too much of a threat to our national security. Now, whether you agree with that or you don't, I can guarantee you this. If the United States sits down tomorrow in discussions with Russia and says, the United States is leaving NATO, what the rest of the European countries want to do, that's on them. But we're not going to fund NATO anymore. We're certainly not going to expand it. Don't mess with our allies, but the entity of NATO is no longer tied to the United States and United States national interest. I'll guarantee you that Putin would sign the dotted line within minutes to end that war. And yes, the Ukrainians are getting Crimea back. And yes, they aren't getting certain portions of the Donbass back. And that is what it is. And boohoo, geographic boundaries change all the time. That's the way of the world since time immemorial. But if you wanted to end the needless meat grinder that is that war, and you wanted to stop sacrificing Ukrainian citizens on the altar of American hegemony around the world, that's the proposal you would make. You would stop this war in an instant. And yet they choose not to. It's because they're making a lot of money off of blood. Lots and lots of money. And their biggest champions of it are Democrats and the remaining neocon war hawks that are still in the Republican Party that haven't been run out by America First Trumpers. The Lindsey Grahams and, formerly Liz Cheney's and those people. So that is what it is. So with that being said, the kind of tie-in with all of this happening within the week of the DNC is that literally hours ago, we're recording this on August 23rd, 2024, RFK announced that he is dropping out of the race.
Sorry,
and
Grandma.
I don't know if he has already said I'm 100% going to endorse Trump, because I had heard in some murmurings elsewhere that he was willing to endorse Trump if Trump would admit that Operation Warp Speed was a mistake, that, trusting the Faucis and the pharmaceutical establishment was a mistake, which Trump has refused to acknowledge up to today. One of his most glaring problems of his first administration. So I don't know if that's still the whole quid pro quo there. If RFK says, if you admit that was wrong and you're not going to do anything like that again, then I'll endorse you, or if he's just outright endorsed. It's one of those two. It's a very new news story. But I want to play a short clip of what his VP, Nicole Shanahan, had said earlier this week when the speculation started that she's kind of hinting that they might drop out and endorse Trump, because she kind of encapsulates for you what their campaign and their independent third party has been going through at the hands of Democrats all throughout this election cycle. And you'll be shocked to learn if you listen to what Big Mike had to say earlier about they don't cheat and change the rules to win. Nicole Shanahan feels a little bit differently about it.
I did not put in tens of millions of dollars to be a spoiler candidate. I put in tens of $millions to win, to fix this country. Clear Choice, this PAC, this DNC aligned PAC that was created specifically to take us out, has spent millions of dollars to take us out. They have banned us, shadow banned us, kept us off stages, manipulated polls, used lawfare against us, sued us in every possible state. They've even planted insiders into our campaign to disrupt it and to create actual legal issues for us. I mean, the extent by which the sabotage they've unleashed upon us, it's mind-blowing. I mean, we're still learning new ways that they have sabotaged us. I really wanted a fair shot at this election, and I believed in the America that a little girl, pledged an allegiance to. And that is not where we are today, and it's not because of the Republican Party taking us out. It is exclusively because of the Democratic Party taking us out. And I am so disappointed I ever helped them. I am so disappointed that I helped Chuck Schumer in that Georgia runoff secure a majority. It's probably one of the biggest mistakes of my life.
So this is Nicole Shanahan, the former big tech wife who, had millions of dollars and, Democratic Party donor. She was kind of alluding to there at the end. She always helped Democrats throughout her life and everything like that. And for having the audacity to run an independent campaign, to put out some different ideas that maybe the Democratic Party wasn't 100% on board with, because isn't that what democracy is all about, right? We're supposed to, put the ideas and, put our thoughts into the marketplace of ideas and let the best ideas win. The reason why I wanted to play that video is there's probably a majority of things that Nicole Shanahan thinks and believes and stands for that I wouldn't necessarily agree with. But there's something very raw and real about the way that she has come to terms with how American politics really works now that she's lived it. That whole anecdote there about being a little girl that pledged America to the United States and just having this idea that they want to fix it. And keep that in the back of your mind as we proceed through the rest of this election, when everybody talks about it's good to be represented. And we're going to see like little girls looking up at their screen and seeing a President Kamala Harris and thinking, nah, that's me. I can do it. I can be anything I want in this country and da-da-da-da-da. And just keep Nicole Shanahan in the back of your mind, because she was a little girl too, a little girl of color, who, checks at least nominally all the same boxes as Kamala Harris. But for daring to have a different opinion on certain subjects, they cheated, lied, implanted evidence, changed the rules, dirty tactics all the way along the line. Not against Orange Man, not against a threat to democracy, a Hitler reincarnate, but against fellow Democrats, the Kennedy family, the old Democratic Party, if there was the closest thing to royalty in this country. And they did that to them. And they did it nonstop and in multiple jurisdictions all across the country from the day that they announced. So don't let the rhetoric and the flowery, Kamala Harris represents joy. That's their new thing. Her laugh represents joy instead of a witch-like cackle. Remember Nicole Shanahan and RFK and what they did to them, because that's the real Democratic Party, and that's what the real American politics in this country.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just a microcosm of where a lot of us are right now. It's just that we want to believe that America is still at that DNC convention. Like, it's all confetti and good, feel-good stories. And, oh, well, his football team showed up to support him, and that's the only reason that he ran for office, was because all of his students told him that he could do it. Yeah, that's cool for them. And the hypocrisy of it all like, we don't weaponize the DOJ. You did against both of your political rivals. I'm surprised they probably didn't try to assassinate Kennedy because it was a little too
on the nose.
So they just did it politically, but which is preferable, to be honest with you. But
of course.
But of course, I just let that ruminate with you. I'll let that clip and then speak. Well, I'll let the clip speak for itself and just go back, watch that clip, back it up, show all the, flowery, bright lights, and we don't cheat. We work our way to the top, and, all of that stuff, which isn't even true on its own merit. Like most of the people that vote for you are always crying foul and want equity and want to be helped out because they didn't work as hard as the other people and they need to be helped out. We have to hire these people because they didn't get there. We have to fast track them. We don't want them to walk up that hill. We have to make super fucking rules that only allow them to succeed, not other people to succeed. It's like to the point where it takes away other people's rights. Riley Gaines, just for one just popping off the head after we just had the Olympics end. So again, you come out and you say flowery language every 4 years. How often do you talk to the American people other than that every 4 years?
Yeah. They talk
not very well.
Never to.
Not very well. And that's why you guys are so tone deaf when you do come out and talk.
Yeah. And, just to kind of, end with a little flavor on just how ticky-tack it got. So earlier this week, RFK was not allowed to testify in his ballot access hearing in the state of Pennsylvania. Now, here's just how underhanded and seedy this whole thing was. Now, this hearing, well, first of all, here's how the hearing started, is on his ballot access application for the state of Pennsylvania, he put his home state as New York. Now, he owns a home in New York. His law practices is in New York. He's licensed to practice law in New York. He has always considered New York his home. This is according to RFK himself. But he also has houses in Massachusetts and California. The Democrats took him to court saying that all of his ballot access petitions and his entire application to be on the ballot in the state of Pennsylvania, a major battleground state, which almost for every election that's at least happened in my lifetime, like Pennsylvania is one of those linchpin states you got to win if you want to ultimately get to the White House. Is they wanted all of his stuff tossed out because he put New York as his home state and they said that he didn't actually live there. Okay? It's ticky-tack, but whatever. Now, the hearing was originally canceled or originally scheduled to be held in Philadelphia. Now, everybody knows, major American city, Philadelphia, a lot of flights in, a lot of flights out. Easy to get in and out of Philadelphia. Coming up onto the hearing that was held earlier this week, they changed the hearing to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Much smaller city. David and I, being from Kansas, will be the first to tell you, when you don't have a major hub to get in and out of, you got like 2 flights per day. I don't know what it is for Harrisburg, but you have much fewer flights than to get in and out of Philadelphia. Well, RFK was at a rally and he had planned to be there. He had his flight ready to be there at Harrisburg in the courthouse at 9 a.m. in the morning or whenever they needed, because the key to this whole case needed to be RFK and his chief ballot access advisor there in the state of Pennsylvania needed to be able to testify. Well, you won't be surprised to learn that RFK's flight into Harrisburg was delayed such that he wasn't able to get to court until 11 a.m. On those grounds, the court disallowed RFK from being able to testify. Now, that would be bad enough if not for the fact that his chief ballot access advisor there in the state of Pennsylvania, Nick Brana, was also there. But he was actually in Harrisburg. He was staying at a hotel. He got there the night before, and he was on deck ready to testify. But the court was like, no, I want to hear from RFK first and Brana second. So Brana was sitting in his hotel room. Nobody called him to come over and testify and say, hey, maybe we'll get his testimony out in the first couple hours, and by that time, RFK will get here, and then we'll hear out what he has to say. So because Brana wasn't physically sitting in the courthouse when the hearing started at 9 or 10 a.m., whatever it was, and because RFK wasn't there, the court said neither one of you can testify in this case. Again, testifying about where they live where RFK lives and the fact that New York is his home residence. For that whole rigmarole, all of those little changes, all those little intricacies, all those things that if we had any sort of real media that was investigating any of these stories would be on the front page of everything. Oh my God, can you believe this major party that bragged for having raised, $300 million for Kamala Harris in 48 hours when she was unceremoniously announced as the presumptive nominee, a month ago. This mega, machine that is Democratic politics went to war in a single state, and they did this in multiple states. But the fact that he was not allowed to testify at his own hearing about where his primary residence is only Pennsylvania. If there was a shred of integrity in MSNBC or CNN, this should be the leading story throughout the entire week that should overshadow everything that's going on at the DNC. Because it completely goes against this whole...
Weaponizes the DOJ?
Right. We don't change the rules. We don't cheat. We don't do this. We don't do that. So, again, the fact that you got to come to Weapons of Meme Destruction to hear this story, we're going to have the links to X down at, there's a 5-minute video clip of RFK laying this out. There's a couple-minute video of his attorney saying, all of this that happened. So you can check the receipts on what we're saying here. But... that was the straw, I think, that broke the camel's back. Because Nicole made that statement, I think, last week. They had this fiasco here in Pennsylvania, probably realizing that their ballot access was going to be delayed to the point that they may not get on there. And who knows how many other states they weren't going to be on the ballot in. So RFK is like, listen, I'm not even going to be on enough ballots to theoretically win because they just won't let me. They won't let my name appear on a piece of fucking paper. And so what am I supposed to do? I guess I have to, drop out and go with the least evil of the two, and hope that because Trump is very transactional, because he doesn't have these like ancient grudges like the Democratic Party holds and says like, listen, Trump's probably like, listen, if you endorse me, I'll put you in my cabinet. And it's not a bad consolation prize for the American people if Trump gets elected and makes, just for example, one position, makes RFK his attorney general. So he can prove that random state senator with the coke addiction correct and weaponize the DOJ and go after every single one of these cheating motherfuckers.
Well, it's not
and take
weaponizing
down
the DOJ
every
when
agency
you
that
actually
deserves to die an ignominious death.
Well, it's not weaponizing the DOJ when you actually hold people accountable for committing crimes and doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Let's not forget that.
They'll call it weaponizing
Let's not
the
forget
DOJ,
that.
Yeah.
But again, if you guys turn a blind eye to this, it's the same as saying like I don't want to hear it anymore. I'm not going to feel sorry for you guys, meaning the Liberal Party, or excuse me, the Democratic Party, but the liberal hegemony, that turned a blind eye to a potential assassination of somebody, and all they could say was the only thing that was wrong with that day is that he missed. Well, then you're not really interested in democracy anymore. Okay. So everything that you say after that is kind of out of my ear. And then also, when you're worried about Trump convicting his political rivals, well, it seems like his political rivals were doing the exact same to him. And it's only fair and just that he tries to uphold the law and hold those that weaponize the DOJ against him accountable for their actions. So there is no middle ground here. And the good thing is that Politico, right? It was the Politico that said that there's hackers said that they can get into the voting machines and there's not enough time to change it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless something that like that goes squirrely, they're going to find out real quick how hard the door swings back. Because we've been saying it for years, it swings back twice as hard. So you might want to yield that power with a little bit of reservation, but nah, they went full bore. And if they don't win, it's going to suck. Anyway, Dane, with all that being said.
Yeah, with all that being said, please check us out. You can find episode 208 at wmdpodcast.com/208. You can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. You can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and X. link up with us on our private members only Facebook page at $5 a month or more of support. You can go to WMDpodcast.com, the support our work tab, to see all of the different donation options there. You can link up with us for free on our other socials, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Do all the algo food while you're there. Like, subscribe, share, comment, join the Sane Space in any way you can. That all helps push us out to a wider audience, and hopefully more people start to see these types of stories that the mainstream media won't tell you about for obvious reasons. And by that sort of whole network effect, growing and growing, the Sane Space grows, not just for our own selfish self-interest of wanting this podcast to grow and, have a wider audience, but also just for the general principle. I know it sounds like a high ideals sort of, general freedom and liberty throughout the world kind of thing, but it really is that, right? Politics is downstream of culture, and culture goes the sort of things that people think and believe, not only about themselves, but about what they're allowed to be subjected to. So every like, subscribe, share, every time you tell a family member about us is one more chance that somebody hears about a meme that they formerly thought, can't question that. Government just gets to do whatever it wants, or Democrats are pro-democracy and Republicans aren't, right? These sort of things need to be destroyed in people's minds first. Once it's destroyed there, then they come to their own conclusions about what is right and good and just and freedom-inducing in the world, and they'll make those decisions. So we thank you for joining us on that humble mission that we've taken upon ourselves. We thank you for being with us for as long as you have been, and we hope to see you with us in days, weeks, months, years, and hopefully decades to come. So,
well, that was very nice, Dane. Well, as always, Mimis, until next week, stay safe, but more importantly, stay free.